Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to Driving and Dragons, where it is once again time to make up for poor production and rehash my old series on alignment in TTRPGs. It's kind of funny the timing here. I make absolutely no allusions to a claim that I am in some way responsible, but I had an article published on the necessity of objective alignment standards in a well received boutique publication a few months back, and over the past several weeks I've mentioned reshooting these alignment videos. Then around the same time I dropped the first reshoot, X suddenly wants to blow up with the alignment debates again. That's pretty convenient for me because it makes this topical. My Patreon is growing, slowly but surely, and I would like to thank everyone who's checking it out and signing up. Just a reminder that patrons get a say in channel content, get to vote on what to do with the Dodge Dart project, and will be automatically entered to win the car when the giveaway time comes around. While you're here, like, share, subscribe, drop a comment. Helps the channel a lot, way more than you know, and it only takes a second. Continuing along the recreation of my alignment series, it's now time to go over the mechanical application of alignment in TTRPGs. This video will be almost exclusively related to Dungeons & Dragons and its many, many derivatives, as the only non-D&D descendants that I can think of offhand that use alignment are Warhammer Fantasy Role-Playing and the Palladium games, though there's a big asterisk on the Palladium games because its system is a bit more about character personality than the core ethos as I understand it. If alignment serves a mechanical purpose in either of those systems, I'm not aware of it. As always, let's define our terms up front. When I say mechanical applications, I'm specifically talking about the direct in-game consequences of choosing a specific alignment and either keeping it or violating it. This is not the role-playing consequences. This is the pluses, minuses, buffs, restrictions, and benefits. I'm also going to discuss hard limits and soft limits as a mechanical function of alignment. A hard limit is a clearly defined, explicit restriction. A hard stop, if you will, such as paladins must be lawful good or detect evil allows you to sense the presence of evil. A neutral character cannot take levels of paladin. Detect evil will not sense a neutral character. A soft limit is a byproduct of a character being of a specific alignment. There's no game rule that prevents a good cleric from using his powers to manipulate others for his personal enrichment. However, his good alignment played correctly would prevent this behavior. He may have the power, but alignment puts a limit on how he uses those spells. The primary function of alignment is balance. Now, I know balance is a dirty word in the TTRPG universe, but so is alignment. So I guess I'm going to be washing my mouth out with soap after we're done here. Balance does matter in a TTRPG. However, not in the same way it does in MMORPGs, video game RPGs, or competitive games. As I've mentioned previously, a TTRPG is balanced as a party versus the whole of the game world. Two parts of that balance are restricting the levels of certain abilities within the party and preventing one character from outpacing the rest of the party in one area or another to the extent that it makes encounters which sufficiently challenge the broken character insurmountable for the other PCs, while making anything that lines up with the majority of the party nothing but a minor annoyance for the unbalanced character on his own. For those who have been patiently waiting for me to point out a place where rules-light games are better than crunchy systems, this is it. Rules-light games rely heavily on the GM to adjust abilities and mechanics on the fly, providing a constant balancing device. Crunchier system, the deeper the designer and the GM have to dig to prevent that kind of thing from breaking the game. And that's where alignment hits the scene mechanically. In two key areas, alignment focuses and or restricts player character powers and abilities. These are the hard and soft limits that I mentioned earlier. I'm going to use the Paladin as a primary example. They are the most well-known and easily recommended alignment-restricted character, and they are also fixed to a single extreme alignment with a code that highlights the soft limits that would otherwise just simply be a byproduct of their lawful good nature. Hard limits are put in place not only as a role-playing guide for the kinds of characters who would be in a specific class, but do what is required to attain a specific ability. They also prevent certain abilities from being stacked with others to create characters that are either min-maxed to the point they break the game, or they acquire the red mage status where they're so good at everything, they're essentially a one-man party. And I'll use my absolute favorite example here. It's a little on the nose and a bit ridiculous, but it kind of highlights the concept in a very easy to understand way. If you eliminate alignment from 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, you can create a multi-class character, Paladin, Rogue, Barbarian. At level 3, he can hit an evil creature with his longsword with a bonus of 2 plus his charisma modifier to the attack, and deal 2 plus his paladin level plus 1d6 additional damage in addition to any other bonuses or feats or high ability score things he has. It's the Raging Sneak Smite. That, in addition to better saves, a level with a d12 hit die, fast movement, and trap sense, all with very minimal costs. This, of course, is not possible with alignment restrictions, as the Barbarian has to be non-lawful. You could also look at adding Druid for the Raging Smiting T-Rex, who also has an animal companion and a paladin mount eventually that shares spells and other abilities, all tied to the same handful of ability scores for spellcasting and such, because the Druid and the paladin are both wisdom and charisma based largely. This is prevented by the Druid requirement to have a neutral element to their alignment and the aforementioned Barbarian restriction. The hard restriction also apply within the class, limiting the effectiveness of the smite ability to only function against those of evil alignment. Another place you find hard restrictions is on certain magic items or other abilities in game. Having different items restricted to different alignments, you prevent the same character from stacking multiple powerful items and abilities in ways that don't make sense for a character in the real world. That 3.5 Paladin also gives me a segue into soft restrictions. You see, the 3.5 has an example of a soft restriction that was made into a hard restriction, the Associates class feature. A Paladin may not knowingly associate with any evil being or continue to associate with anyone who violates their code of conduct. While not an explicit alignment restriction, it codifies the idea that a Paladin isn't allowed to let the rogue handle it to get around their alignment and the strictures of that ethical morality. It's also seen in the Druid, who must revere nature and remain at least partially neutral to reflect the uncaring balance of all things in nature. Soft restrictions are a non-rule balance mechanic. A non-alignment example of which would be the meme about summoning small bugs, then transforming them into elephants 20 feet above your enemies. That doesn't work. Deliberately harming the summoned animals is irreverent of nature and violates the Druid's code of conduct. In all honesty, it's the soft limits that make for better games overall. When a monk must be lawful, and that means he isn't going to be able to use his abilities to break out of prison, or those prisoners who are rightfully held anyway, or kick the doors in on the shop and rob it at night. He has to follow that lawful alignment, and it makes for a better game because you're not just cheesing your way around things. Clerics who have to be within one step of their deity are held to specific patterns of behavior, which prevents them from using certain spells and abilities in ways that would be unbalanced or would kind of break the immersion when they're used properly. The soft limits are also more difficult to handle. It becomes very difficult to keep yourself from alignment policing. That urge to say, dude, aren't you supposed to be good? Soft limits are largely self-enforced by good players, and the kind of thing that would only involve the game master after a prolonged period of violating alignment by the player. So how do we properly enforce alignment as a mechanic? Here's a way that gives the player plenty of warning so they don't feel like, hey, you just blindsided me by changing my alignment and taking away my abilities, but also without a direct, hey, you're supposed to be good kind of call. When you notice a player consistently trying to cheese their way around alignment or just not acting within their alignment, grab your percentile dice and start giving them a failure chance. Start small. 10% failure chance where that magic sword doesn't function properly, or where that cure spell only heals half, or it takes 2 rounds to actually deliver all of its healing. If the out of alignment behavior continues, increase the percentage. If it's a divine power that comes from a player's god, maybe the failure happens when it's merely an inconvenience at first, with spells only failing when the matter isn't urgent. That way, the loss of abilities is gradual, just like a change in alignment should be. In the end, alignment as a mechanic gives the DM tools that lock players out of certain combinations of abilities, or at the very least discourages certain ways of utilizing the resources that would otherwise disrupt the game, both at the table and in the game world. It does this in a way that is both immersive and largely in the background, as opposed to just arbitrarily saying, you can't do this for reasons, or requiring a DM or a game designer to have to suss out every single combination that shouldn't go together and put a specific restriction on it. Rule 0 at work, using alignment as a guide, just like alignment is supposed to be a guide for the players in their characters' decision making. Anyway, that's what I've got on alignment as a mechanic for right now. While it really shines as a tool to help players develop their characters and GMs to get in the mindset of NPCs, there are actual mechanical reasons not to hand wave it away in the games where it's been codified. And in case this isn't evident, it's yet another reason why it must be objectively defined and absolutely doesn't work with relativistic, my good for my truth BS. You can't have a rule that is applied based on how the player feels in that moment. Lawful isn't about your personal code any more than a touchdown is based on where you personally feel the goal line should be. That's what I have for you guys today. See you guys next time when I start covering the classic definitions of what each alignment is supposed to be.